Everybody's got something to hide except me and my monkey and Shawn Layden because he's been giving a lot of interviews lately. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Dornbush. I'm your host for episode 578 of Beyond, IGN's weekly PlayStation show. I am joined by Max Scoville.
Happiness is a warm PlayStation 4.
And Brian Altano.
Your intros are just like bizarre art at this point. I love
That's what
it.
I'm going for.
It's really good.
You
How
didn't
much
go
we
with the
threw you
Beatles
off?
motif?
No,
You couldn't do a Beatles thing?
I don't care.
Do a Beatles thing.
Hey, hey, we're the Beatles. People love the music we
favorite song.
make. Good songs from the Beatles.
While my PlayStation Vita gently
Bam.
weeps. Anyway, we have a lot to discuss this week because, as I mentioned, Shawn Layden of Sony has been giving a lot of interviews, and just as we're recording, he actually finished up a keynote at DICE, which is a yearly event that happens in Las Vegas that our good old Andrew Goldfarb and Joe Screbbles are at.
Rest in peace.
Yes. Sad they'll never make it back. There is actually a lot to go through, so not only did Layden give this keynote, but he has also given several interviews that look at currently like the state of PlayStation as it is and a little bit of future thought of where PlayStation will go. He didn't mention anything PS5 specific in any of these
PS5?
interviews. He
Did
didn't
he
say
confirm it's coming out soon?
it. No.
Can we
When's
get
the
it?
release date?
I want to buy one.
Tomorrow.
Where is the PS5?
You've already had it, Brian.
No, I think it's cool that he's out there talking because he's talking about what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for them.
Yeah.
And I think through that we can mine some ideas about where their direction might go from here.
Yeah, so the first of like several topics that he's discussed I want to talk about were specifically him discussing why they're not at E3. And the long and short of it was, end of last year-ish, Sony announced that they were dropping out of E3 for the first time. They won't have any sort of major presence there. They won't have a press conference, which has been such an important staple of the show for the last few years especially. And in one of these recent interviews, Layden spoke to the fact of, hey, E3 has become a very different show. And back when we first started being a part of E3, it was about, talking to journalists and talking to the people who are going to buy our games and put them in their stores, like the GameStops and the Targets and everything in the world.
right.
But he was like, we now have a yearly event, Destination PlayStation, that goes on in February, where we talk to the people who are at Best Buys and Amazon and all that. So we're already having that discussion with them. And he was like, but journalists, news is now so 24/7 with gaming that having a singular event be where all that news comes from doesn't make the most sense for them as a company right now.
He's right.
And I think that's like a pretty frank, honest answer. Don't get me wrong. I think part of it is the stuff that they have is probably not ready for an E3 showing this year.
You're right.
But I do think that makes sense. And I think we're seeing a very interesting turning point year for E3. How do you feel about it?
E3 is kind of outdated in a lot of ways. I mean, we've talked to people who used to work on the press side of things, or on the physical, like printing press, physical media side of things.
Yeah.
And the way it worked then is people would go to E3 for a week, and back then I think it was 3 days long, and you'd go there, you'd see the press conferences, you'd walk around the show floor, you'd play a bunch of games, and you'd go home and you'd spend the next month or so writing up articles, and you'd put them in a magazine. If there was too much to fit, you'd break it out in the next month. But it wasn't like get back to the war room and write up an article and get it up at 2 a.m,
Right.
which is kind of where we're at
live
now.
stream
Exactly.
from the show
Yeah.
floor. And we've talked about this before. You just hinted at it. But yeah, E3 is predominantly, and not predominantly, but the large focus of it is business guys who are way more handsome than all of us, walking around in expensive suits going,
Possible.
hey, I'll take 10,000 anthems. Like they're basically like CEO guys at Walmart, and they're walking around trying to, check the pulse on this gamer thing. And then there's us being like, we want news, we want trade show, we want press conferences and all this stuff. It is weird to see, and it still is weird to see one of the big three pull out of this show. I think the fact that this announcement happened last year shows that it wasn't just them caught with their pants down. Like this is obviously they came out of E3 last year, rolled right past PSX without it happening, and then said, how do we want to approach 2019 in terms of our announcements? But so many companies aren't there. Rockstar,
Well,
who just had the best-selling game of 2018, has not been at E3 in ages.
E3 made a lot of sense before the internet, and it made a lot of sense back when all the games would come out prior to Christmas because people only got video games around the holiday season when they were sort of glorified toys. But we're at a point now where they're competing with movie releases.
Yeah.
And it's a huge thing. And also, if you can, I mean, we're going to talk about this, but Apex Legends, you can just flip a thing on and go, hey, this game's out, check it out, it's out now.
Yeah. It's,
and it becomes the biggest game out there, you know?
I forget which CEO it was. Maybe it was either HBO or Netflix, but they said our biggest competitor aren't the other streaming services. It's Fortnite. Like,
Right.
we're in such a different entertainment landscape. And Layden had mentioned specifically about E3. He said the world has changed, but E3 hasn't necessarily changed with it. And he pointed to the fact of he's on the ESA board, so like obviously he doesn't want E3 to fail.
Of course
But
not.
it seems like it's becoming a very different show when we have like these Coliseum panels, and obviously the public is now coming into it. Do you guys see E3, whether more companies pull out or not, do you see it becoming a much more consumer focused event?
I think if the ESA had any idea what they were doing, they would pivot into being more of a Comic-Con for gamers.
Yeah.
But they're still kind of hanging on to this sort of like vestigial trade show identity, and at the same time that sort of exclusivity. And I've talked to people who've gone to E3 as fans, as gamers, and they're like sort of like, this isn't really what I expected. And it's like, well, yeah, sort of with the rise of press and influencers, I feel like a lot of the sort of demos and stuff have almost been pulled back. They've gone behind closed doors. There's less swag. And then the ESA just kind of arbitrarily was like, we are letting in 20,000 fans. Come on in, everybody. And everyone's like, we weren't prepared for this.
the show didn't really adapt to that.
Well,
It
because
wasn't given the chance.
The Comic-Con for gamers things is perfect. And right now the closest we have to that is PAX. And which PAX should you go to? I don't know, the one closest to you, the one nearest to the time that you want to go to PAX.
Yeah.
Who's going to be there? Maybe Days Gone, maybe Blizzard, maybe the Oculus Rift, probably Discord. Who knows, right? Like it's a weird. So whereas E3, you're like, I know who's going to be there. Nintendo's going to be there. Sony's going to be there. EA's going to be maybe in the parking lot now. Activision ?
And Microsoft, instead of being on the show floor, they had Mixer there last year. And
Yep.
because they now own the Microsoft, formerly Nokia Theater, they're using that as their space. So
Yeah.
to say they don't also want to move.
Well, it's also, I mean, I think that the smartest thing for E3 would be to change it to be a little more like Gamescom, where you have the business days and everyone comes in and does their business, and it's, you know, there's not like fans running around, no offense. And then you open it up to the public and you have all these incredible, huge installations and activations that have been built, and you don't just rip them down. You actually let people go in and appreciate them. It's not just a bunch of like, you know, haggard business people like rushing past being like, I don't have time to talk to Urukai. Get out of here. I don't care about Shadow of Mordor right now. Or,
No, that's
you know.
perfect.
Yeah.
TGS does the same thing on a much smaller scale, where it's a small show floor. They invite press in for a day. Everybody gets their homework done, and then they leave. And you don't, you know, not saying that like it's harder to do your job when there's fans running around, but honestly, I think it's a worse show for the fans when there's a bunch of industry assholes cutting you in line.
Yeah.
You know, when you paid money to get in, and some schmuck like me comes up with a hat and a pencil sticking out of it and a notebook, and I'm like, oh, I'm
how I'm
That's what
always-
Brian wears at E3.
Exactly. I love my hat
Yeah.
with a pencil in it. It's actually at the top, so it spins. Yeah, I like press people getting in the way. I remember one year at E3, I went to the Nintendo booth, and Nintendo let us cut Nintendo Power. And I felt like the worst guy in the world, because they were like, well, IGN, you know, you're huge, and Nintendo Power, you're a dying magazine. And I'm like, Nintendo Power is why I'm here.
Yeah.
Nintendo Power is why I do what I do for a living, you know, because I open my mail once a month or once every 2 months back when I was a kid.
And now we have that with influencers and streamers.
Yeah.
They just let them cut us.
The cycle of
Exactly,
life.
which is good. It's
but
good.
they're not giving us trifold posters that I can put on my wall every
Yeah. And so where that show goes, I don't know. I do think it's kind of a shame that they just now started inviting the public back, but it's to a version that's like kind of gone the way of the dodo.
It's a half step show. Like you guys perfectly nailed it. I think we can see what the show could be to evolve. It can be that Comic-Con, but they're resisting. They don't want to fully make that leap because of whatever risks are involved. But I don't know. I see potential in them making those.
Yeah,
risks,
I think
and
that
it
a
could be
major
much better
player
show.
like Sony pulling out is a pretty huge indication that this is a constantly changing landscape, and maybe this 25-year-old institution isn't necessarily what's driving the industry.
the way to go. Yeah. So with Sony pulling out though of E3, how do you guys think they should adapt? Whether obviously we don't know if they're going to do a PSX this year. Do you see them doing anything like a Nintendo Direct or Inside Xbox? Like, do you see them adapting that style? Do you think they should adapt that style?
I would much prefer the former than the latter. I watched Inside Xbox last week, and I was kind of baffled at how disconnected and rambly it was. I think that, no disrespect to the people making that product, but I think that it's like, it's doing a great job of humanizing the people working on all things Xbox, but in terms of like a cohesive sort of rock solid presentation, it's missing that. And it's the same thing that Sony experimented with during their E3 show, which felt like Insider Xbox. It was this like half stage show, half podcast, interview setup, and bouncing from set to set. And it was all over the place and completely incoherent. Whereas Nintendo Direct, we didn't know that one was happening, and then we found out that one is happening, and now it's the biggest story of the week. Nintendo announced that this week we're getting one. It's 35 minutes long. They gave you a little teaser about what they're focusing on. They said Fire Emblem and Switch stuff. And I know that there won't be any technical hiccups in it because it's already shot and edited and produced. And there's no audience reaction. There's no like, please be excited. There's no like meme moments outside of like stuff like that. That's
that they intend.
You know,
there will be.
Star Fox puppets or whatever.
Yeah, I'll take that any
I think that that would be the smartest thing possible. I would love to see that so much. I mean, I think that, you know, Greg and company over at Kind of Funny doing the game showcase had exactly the right idea. That's the direction that things are going. Like, why would you introduce like the live element when it doesn't need to be there?
Yeah.
Because if it's just a excuse for technical hiccups when you could have this wonderful, like, I don't know, it feels like it's almost like a movie length commercial. And it's so thought out and so jam packed with stuff happening that you kind of forget you're just being sort of advertised to.
Totally.
Right.
But like that's kind of
And so what I love about Nintendo Directs the most is the same thing I love about the way we buy games digitally now, is that it presents this ecosystem where something like Wargroove and Guacamelee 2 gets the same amount of like sort of pomp and flair as The Last of Us, which is awesome. I love that because it's the way where they can take a bunch of really cool indie games on PS4 or PS5, give them this like rock solid like moment, and then go, oh, and one more thing, Spider-Man 2. And all of that is in the same block. And it doesn't cut to the audience and show some guy on his phone bored. Because by the way, everyone in that audience is on their phones or on their laptops because they're journalists. And that's what so they're not even really paying attention. So cut all of that out, you know? Just give us something that's like in February,
and,
you know? Or is it February?
And then
next February.
Give it to us now.
Have PSX at a time that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, when there are a bunch of demos and like product builds ready to go and there's stuff to show off and there's a bunch of indie devs who can come together and be like PSX when it hits is a wonderful show.
Totally.
Because it is focused enough that everyone there is like, I play on PlayStation 4. Maybe I have a PSVR, maybe I have a Vita. Sorry if I have a Vita. You know, it's all in one place. You walk around, you see people's like PSN names on their tags. Like that makes a ton of sense. Something as big and spread out as E3 or PAX or Comic-Con is just sort of like, what are you here for? What do you like? What's the, you know, I mean.
Well, it's sort of like PSX last year was supposed to be in December, or that's when we thought it would be, because historically that's when it's been. But that was coming off the tails of Spider-Man and God of War that were out, known quantities. We were full on those things already. And then you talk to the people who are making Days Gone and Death Stranding and The Last of Us 2, and you're like, you got anything for us? And they're like, no, not yet.
Yeah.
Like Days Gone made its debut in America as a playable game at PAX South just a month ago. And Death Stranding we haven't played yet, and Last of Us 2 we haven't played yet. So what would PSX have been?
Well, and so in one of the interviews, Layden mentioned like their focus now is making bigger but fewer games on the first party side. So one of the things that they've been doing recently is to use the PlayStation blog or something to announce release dates or to highlight games. But do you think that's effective when, for me, like the direct style would make so much more sense because you have games like The Last of Us and like Ghost of Tsushima that you can put anything up and people will read it. Yep. But you put a Concrete Genie or PSVR titles that don't have as big an audience but are interesting titles and worth us at least acknowledging and taking a look at and seeing what they offer. I don't feel like the blog services both of those equally, whereas a direct style thing would allow that.
Also, it's a blog.
Yeah.
It's 2019. We're on a video show / audio podcast right now. People consume media differently. A blog is sort of an outdated concept. Yeah. It is a glorified press release.
Check out our website.
Yeah. We still have articles there.
Well, again, so like what Nintendo does is they don't just go, here's our quarterly direct. They go, we're doing a direct focus on indies. We're doing a direct focus on Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like they will hyper focus on a franchise or a game or a platform. They'll say, this is just 3DS. This is just Switch.
If they don't have anything to say, they don't put anything up.
Yeah.
Unlike Beyond this week, where we're really just getting blood from a stone.
Yeah. No, I mean, so if say Sony were to, in a month, go, hey, we have a presentation focused entirely on the big PSVR games of 2019, I'd be like, oh, dude, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe one or two of those games on its own does not form an entire presentation, but you get together 10 titles and you go, here are 10 PSVR games you can play this year. And I go, that's awesome. What a great library. It shows you care about your system. Awesome.
Yeah.
A month later, you go, here's a focus on PlayStation indies, or minis, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And you do that. And then a couple months after that, you go like, here are the big games of fall. Like come up with a headline and then create the content underneath it. You know, there's so much room for that. And I don't think any of that means to be like a giant stage show at E3 or even a whole convention dedicated to whatever they're working on. Like do it when you're ready.
Yeah.
And just wait. The direct going up this week it's the furthest we've ever been from a Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
And so they took their time. So I'm okay with Sony taking their time.
Same. Yeah. And I think it's telling with Layden doing all these interviews and doing the keynote at DICE that they are ready to start talking about stuff. They don't want to be out of the picture entirely in 2019.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see how they continue that conversation going forward. One of the things Layden also mentioned in one of his interviews that I wanted to bring up was that he mentioned in terms of looking forward of what Sony first party does and doesn't do well, he mentioned multiplayer as an aspect, and he wasn't like, I don't mean sports or, like racing. Obviously, they have MLB The Show every year, and they have Gran Turismo and things like that. He was like, I mean...
He'd lump them into one category.
Yeah, based. I mean, he
We
did.
always do.
A car is a ball, right?
Yeah.
It is in Rocket League.
It has 4 balls on the sides that make it go forward. I don't know what those things
It's
are called.
pronounced Beals.
Ooh, Beals. He meant more like a GTA Online or a Fortnite or something that has like that big of a multiplayer presence or like an Apex Legends. Is that something you guys want to see from?
My immediate knee-jerk reaction to that is sort of a scaled-up version of what we had, I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago, where everything had to have multiplayer in it.
Yeah.
Are you
Like
talking
when-
about MAG?
Massive action game.
You guys remember MAG?
wow,
Oh, yeah.
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 No, I was thinking more like I don't
Space
know,
2.
where they were like, Dead Space 2, Mass Effect 3,
Isn't the first Tomb Raider?
Tomb Raider
Yeah.
had, and it was like, I mean, even like Last of Us had multiplayer. I imagine the new one will too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you see, like the thing is, I think there's this impatience where you're putting out one physical game. It's got to have multiplayer. It's like multiplayer is an ecosystem. Multiplayer is a long form thing. If you want to actually have that be successful, you need to build a community around it, and that's a huge undertaking. So my thought is that, oh God, we're going to get like a resurrection of that, an HD remaster of that issue where they shoehorn in multiplayer to single player experiences. Yeah. And maybe don't quite pull it off,
Right.
But I like to think that maybe they've learned from some lessons and
I
some
think
experiences.
it depends on who tackles it. Like Uncharted's multiplayer is surprisingly popular and
Yeah.
has a large audience still playing it today. It's also, people have said this before, that keeps you from trading a game in. When you know that you're getting regular content drops. The thing is, Sony right now has an incredible portfolio of studios making just incredibly awesome, rock solid single player games, right? Story driven, narrative, and so if they allow that to persist, and they make some other stuff on the side that's multiplayer focused, I'm okay with it. What I don't want is them going to Brian at Spider-Man and Corey at God of War and going like, can you guys do a multiplayer thing instead? And they're like, no, we wrote this is a story. And they're like, no, don't do it anymore. So as long as we still get all of that story driven stuff, then I'm okay with everything else.
But what if 100 Atreuses dropped into an arena together?
I think most likely we're going to see Horizon at
Yeah.
because I mean their background totally drawing a blank
With Killzone?
Killzone,
Guerrilla Games.
Guerrilla, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean they've done Killzone. They know their way around that.
Yeah.
And also that's an open world, so like it's not just like, oh, we built this like corridor that the character goes through and has an emotional journey. They're like, no, we built a goddamn ecosystem with robot dinosaurs walking around.
Yeah.
So that's pretty well suited to that.
I mean, I hate saying this, a Horizon Battle Royale game where like the dinosaurs got increasingly bigger as the map shrunk would be so stupid it would work.
I kind of like that.
Something like that.
Man, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut
But
that.
again-
We're going to pitch that to them. Let's
Yeah.
take that
But
off the
again,
air.
I want Horizon One Dawn.
One Dawn. Yeah. Horizon One
Horizon
Eclipse.
Zero Afternoon, whatever
Yeah.
it is. I want that full single player game and then do anything you want afterwards. Because
Yeah.
I'll probably skip it.
I think Death Stranding is going to have some bizarre multiplayer component to it.
They've like hinted at that. In
Yeah.
interviews and
Metal
things.
Gear
Like,
Solid
there's
5 did, right?
Yeah, and it was. I think people liked it.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where like I played a bunch of the game, and then when online went up, I was like away, and then I came back and everyone was over it. You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know what that was about.
And then they built Metal Gear Survive, and everyone was happy.
Yeah.
Moving on to a
around the world.
few.
What is that? I've never heard of it before. I don't know
Fair
what
enough.
you mean by that.
Layden was also talking about in his keynote at DICE earlier today, as we're recording, he brought up an interesting thing that I just wanted to discuss with you guys. Is he acknowledged Nintendo and Microsoft, which I just thought was an interesting move because there's been such reticence
That
to ever acknowledge.
sellout.
Yeah,
He doesn't have the PlayStation passion.
No, not
I don't think
anymore.
he should host their shows anymore.
I don't think so either.
He was playing Mario Odyssey the entire time.
What?
Yeah, it was really weird while using an adaptive controller from Xbox.
Next, you'll tell me he'll be on stage at the Game Awards with those traitors.
But not look at them or acknowledge them in any way. I'm sorry, I appreciate what that moment was. It was so awkward. It was so awkward. But anyway, he pointed to the success of the Switch and how big of a risk it was, and talking about how the Xbox adaptive controller, was such an important step in making the gaming industry as a whole more accessible.
Yeah.
And it's so weird to me, but like I feel like it's of note that he is acknowledging the competition right now, because it feels like more and more the big three have become isolated from each other.
Did he seem like a bitter ex-boyfriend looking at the Switch and being like, yeah, imagine that underpowered little system with a touch screen, and you can put a lot of indie games on it. Imagine that, a lot of Japanese.
Hey, the PlayStation console line was co-created by bitter ex-boyfriends of people
fair.
that
Yeah.
couldn't work on the Super Nintendo successor, so it's all even.
Fair point.
It's really cool to see him acknowledge the competition. It's even cooler to see him acknowledge their strengths.
Yes.
Because I think there was an era, the Attitude Era or wherever it was in the video game industry, where it just seemed like there was a lot of smack talk. Even like Reggie coming out and being like, "Oh, we're here to kick ass and take names," or "That's not my problem," all that kind of stuff. I'll kill them in the street with my bare hands.
Pizzas.
Yeah. It feels like we're in a cool point now where everyone is sort of rubbing shoulders with each other and understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each platform. And Sony did come out of this generation on top and will, but there's a lot of stuff they could be better about. And I think that, like we've talked about this before, stuff like Game Pass, the adaptive controller, I mean, bringing back a dedicated portable in some way would all be really cool things to see. I don't know if we'll ever see a Vita again, but like, if there was a way to play PS5 games on the go, great. If there was a way to be more inclusive with the way our video games are controlled by all players on Earth, awesome. That's something that everyone should be striving for.
It's it's nice to see, and he also not just acknowledging other companies' strengths, but acknowledged Sony's own weaknesses and talked a little bit about the PS3 and how that was such a hubristic moment for the company, and he called it, I think, their Icarus moment of flying too close to the sun.
What is this new transparency from?
I know,
like
it's weird,
corporate
right?
figureheads.
Yeah.
That's really impressive to see that. I love that.
Yeah.
We just got that recently when I don't mean to speak of the cursed names,
Cross
but
the streams.
when Nintendo was like, hey, Metroid Prime isn't. We're going back to the drawing board with that, and it's like, oh, so you're not just going to string people along and just blow smoke up asses. You're just kind of like, hey, hold on a second, sorry about that, but we'll be just a moment.
Hey, if you're working on Final Fantasy VII, maybe take a little cue from that.
You got some,
Do you know that game was announced in the same breath of?
It's like if you went to a restaurant and there was just like a lot of black smoke coming out of the kitchen, and the waiter kept coming out and being like, "Yeah, your Cobb salad will be right out." Hold
Why
on
is
a
there
second.
smoke for the salad?
That game was announced at the same E3 as Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
And one of those is now in our Game of the Year running, and we've played it, and we're doing tofu runs and all this other stuff. And the other one,
Kingdom Hearts is done, so maybe it'll happen.
salad.
Yeah, it's a really weird time, but I appreciate this transparency, and I think moving forward, Sony in particular, like they will need it more than ever if they want to be able to stay in the conversation and relate to their consumers.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think that Sony's sort of hesitance to go out and just put everything out there is maybe realizing that that's sort of damaging to brands when people are tired of hearing about them, and it's Boy Who Cried Wolf scenario.
Yeah.
And maybe they're taking a page from, Rockstar and company.
And to their defense, romaine lettuce is best when it's just completely
real
black.
hot. Yeah.
Just black and smoked
When you've
out.
had it in a griddle for like 45
just charred
minutes.
sardines. Yeah, exactly.
My favorite salads. In addition to that, though, one last thing with everything Layden's been talking about, there's been in this interesting back and forth of crossplay. So right now, for PS4 crossplay, it's in its beta form. They've been talking about it. Fortnite and Rocket League have it.
Yeah.
excuse me,
Finally.
Yes, finally.
Yeah, that was a struggle this year. Last year.
Yeah, it was several months in between Fortnite and Rocket League getting it. But anyway, both War Thunder and Hi-Rez have publicly tweeted, the Hi-Rez CEO and president tweeted, and the War Thunder official gaming account tweeted, hey, we would love crossplay for our games, Sony. Like, they added Sony. They're talking to Sony. The War Thunder account made a weird 3 billboards parody asking why there was no crossplay for Sony. So these companies were like...
That's kind of...
It's a weird, it's
That's
a
a
weird
strange
message.
movie to go to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way they delivered their message aside, Layden responded to it in his interview with Game Informer and talked about the fact of, he was like, hey, we want it. We're obviously moving toward having this more and more. Talk to your account managers. He basically was giving like detailed instructions you would get from a hotline in the middle of the interview. It was like, talk to your Sony account managers about the right steps you need to take because we've learned so much of working with Epic and things.
That's so odd. The whole
It's all very strange. But then in following that, the CEO of Chucklefish, which published Wargroove, which does have crossplay among all the other platforms, said with PS4 it won't be having crossplay with those other platforms, and they worked with their account managers and did work with Sony and tried to make it happen, and said essentially they were denied it. And on their side, they said it's a flip of a switch for them.
And Shawn Layden said, have you tried turning it on and off again?
And they've been flipping that switch and it's not working. But so essentially...
So they're making a meme based on Brie Larson's room. And
yeah.
Other movie darlings from 5 years ago.
Yes, of course.
Yes. That's the best way to
Inglorious
get your
Bastards.
message. And here's the Django Unchained to tell you why we need a Vita.
It's just this weird back and forth where Tom Marks wrote a good opinion piece a while back where like Sony's stance on crossplay following E3 and everything going on there was bad.
Yeah.
And it still feels like right now it feels muddled and it feels like maybe some parts of the company aren't talking to others, or the Chucklefish CEO acknowledged like, hey, we obviously don't know what's going on Sony's side. Like maybe they don't want to open it up to everyone right now. Like they're being picky and choosy because it is a beta in their regard. But it's an odd thing to see this happening in the public.
Well, especially to pass the blame like that.
Yeah.
And go, especially coming out off of like a year where everyone was like, make crossplay work. And they're like, no, it doesn't make sense for our business. And everyone was like, no one cares, make it work. For them to be like, oh, we tried it and it's cool and you can try it too, but it's not really our fault. It's up to developers. And then immediately having developers go, no.
Yeah,
we want to, you won't let us.
That's odd. That feels like one of the sort of, let us change our usernames kind of scenarios where it's like maybe if you don't have anything to say, don't tell people to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's wait until it's sort of streamlined. And
where's that, by the way?
The changing our names? It's right there with the PS5.
It's one of the launch titles for the
Cobb
PS5.
So that's in the kitchen with the burn comps.
Yeah, it's all coming out in 2 to 7 years. It's a weird thing to see like companies publicly jockeying for that attention.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how this discussion goes. I feel like even with Layden, giving the company stance in these interviews, seeing these responses, this is going to be a thing that's going to continue at least for the next year, if not forward. But I did want to jump to, before we talk about a few other things, a game that hopefully will have crossplay soon because it's getting pretty popular is Apex Legends, which currently doesn't have crossplay. Respawn Entertainment has talked about their hoping to bring crossplay to it someday. I'd imagine it will probably be one of the games that Sony enables it for because it recently passed the 25 million player mark, and I think it had 2.5 million concurrents already. This isn't a week of release. What do you guys think about the phenomenon of how popular this game is, its place in the battle royale genre? What we're seeing.
This felt like bad movie writing where something becomes too popular too fast. This is like a gag on The Simpsons where like everyone has yo-yos. Like it happened overnight, literally. Like somebody was, I don't want to say it was like Shinobi on Twitter, was breaking down like the popularity of Fortnite over the course of a few months, and like Apex was just leagues faster. And it's crazy because it just came out. So it's not even like that thing where, a game comes out and people are like, yeah, it's okay, I'm playing it, but here are the things that are wrong with it. And they definitely are doing that. But like it's keeping people engaged enough to be like, it's not a wait and see scenario. It's I want this now.
Yeah, and I think what's adding to that is, and anecdotally we're seeing this, is a lot of people, myself included, love Fortnite, are terrible at the building element of it. And that's something that has always pushed me off because when I get to the end of a Fortnite game, Lord forbid I'm still alive, my best plan is to hope that someone commits suicide and then I get their bazooka and then I win. But what usually happens is like people play 4D chess over my head and build immaculate structures and take me down.
I'm genuinely surprised that Fortnite hasn't been like, hey, here's the vanilla fighting mode. Like,
Right.
it's just a shooter, you know?
And so the other thing is that from first glance, Fortnite is a cartoon game for kids. And again, I love it. It's got a goofy art style and aesthetic, but there are a lot of people, I think Spider-Verse just taught us that won't go see something or play something if it looks childish. Whereas Apex looks like a gritty, mature, adult Call of Duty robot game, right?
Interestingly, though, and I don't even think about this because I'm 32 and completely desensitized to everything, I went down to see family last weekend, and I saw my 13-year-old nephew, who I usually sort of like try to prod and be like, what's cool? Who's that streamer you're watching? What is his secret? But no, I was like, what are you playing? He's like, Apex Legends. I was like, dude, me too.
Yeah.
Sort of when I'm home. But I was like, what do you like about it? And he's like, oh, well, I like that I can play it because it doesn't have blood because my mom let me play it. And I was like, oh. That's right. That's the thing that moms shut down sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, like, again, I looked at it, I was like, yeah, it's like Titanfall. It looks gritty. You know?
Well,
It doesn't
because
look
like I think children everywhere will go out of their way to play Call of Duty, but I don't think adults everywhere will go out of their way to play Fortnite. And so like everyone, all that audience funnels to one spot. And I don't think it always works in reverse because again, lots of adult burly men are like, no, I want to play the game with.
I like that
pumpkins.
it's also just they've totally streamlined some great traversal in Titanfall. And initially, I heard about this and I was like, wait a minute, they made Titanfall as a battle royale, but there's no Titans,
Right.
And there's no wall running. I don't care. And then I played it for 5 minutes and I was like, this is still extremely fun. And my robot has zip lines.
They know how to make shooters.
Yeah, it's like what they say about dieting. They're like, don't focus on what you can't have.
Yeah.
Like celebrate what's there.
Yeah.
You know, which is burn salad. No, so like I had the gut reaction too, where I was like, no robots and no wall running, and it was like, oh, well, traversal is still insane in this game, and it's still incredibly quick. And so celebrate what it's doing well instead of like what it's not doing well. And of course, like we covered it last week, but seconds later they were like, by the way, Titanfall 2 is still happening, or 3. So
We're still making more. Yeah, they said a premium Titanfall experience is coming. News at least this year of it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what
Sweet.
happens.
Which is like we've seen that game has actually had an uptick in players because it's on sale for like $6 right now, and also people are like, I want more of what these guys do, which I love seeing.
Yeah.
By the way, do that when you go see a movie and you're like, who made this movie? Go watch their other movies. And like when you hear an album and you're like, what inspired this album? Go do that. Just people need to do that.
You want to keep seeing the great stuff from the people you like. Experience all of it.
Support it all.
It's this interesting thing though, like seeing this rise. I don't think it's necessarily going to be like goodbye Fortnite in 2 weeks. Like I don't think that's going to.
No.
It's not going to be anything
Fortnite's
like
right,
that.
yeah.
But in terms of Apex Legends dominance right now, like it was that huge surprise overnight thing. But EA also has Anthem coming out soon, which it's not a battle royale necessarily, but it is a heavily online multiplayer focused game. Do you see this kind of backfiring on them a little bit? Because I don't think they imagined this was going to happen.
No,
with Apex.
yes, and justifiably it should. This is Respawn's revenge. After a couple years ago, where Titanfall 2 went head to head with Battlefield within like 4 days,
It was
and
in
got
between,
killed.
yeah.
Because it was the sort of lesser known title, and it was the first time it was appearing on multi-platform and not just platform exclusive to one place. And it was story focused, and people went for the military shooter instead.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Battlefield is still kind of late to the party with their
The battle royale.
Firestorm or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I want to check that out because I like Battlefield, but
Max,
I'm also just like,
You played a significant amount of Anthem. Do you think this is going to be something that people sort of ignore in favor of something that's free?
I don't think so. I think that Anthem is one of those sort of like I think inevitably because of the scale of it, it's going to come out and they're going to have to sort of I don't know if it's going to perform as well as EA wants because they want to own us all and conquer everything. But I mean, I think it's gonna. They're probably gonna be like, well, it's performed admirably, and we were hoping for more, but we've also got a 10-year plan in place. I think it's the same thing as sort of like you can have Destiny and Call of Duty coexisting. Like a ton of people, even if they were sort of like lapsed Call of Duty players, jumped on Blackout because it was like, oh, it's a AAA battle royale. Hell yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
And people are still playing Destiny. I don't know what the hell they're talking about because I noped out of that game after the.
Well,
first,
you can find out what they're talking about. Fire Team Chat.
If it doesn't succeed, though, we might actually hear more transparently than that. Because did you read the numbers on Battlefield?
On Battlefield, no.
Yeah, I think they said it sold around 6 or 7 million, which underperformed for them.
Yeah.
Because I think the last one sold way more than that. A lot of factors involved there, but I think we would probably know very soon. The thing is, Vince Zampella tweeted just yesterday that 25 million people, as of yesterday, I'm sure that number's doubled already, are playing or have downloaded or have interacted in some way with their new game. So I don't know. I don't see Anthem doing those kind of numbers.
No, I think Anthem is still sort of rooted in a kind of old school thing where you buy the thing in the box and then you get stuff after the fact. But like, it's weird to see like something like Fortnite or Apex Legends is a launcher. And you get it for free, and anything, Trojan horses in microtransactions and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's just sort of like, here it is.
Yep.
It's out there. I mean, it's kind of like crack dealer logic, where it's like, oh, that first taste is yours. But to be like, oh, $60 for a thing, and then maybe I like what comes after. I think we're definitely going to see Anthem probably get a boost around, holiday season time.
Sure. Yeah.
And, EA is going to continue like funneling money into that to be like, we're going to build this ecosystem, and eventually there's going to be like Anthem, the Forsaken King edition that comes out in next year.
Do you know what's like immensely awesome right now and incredibly refreshing is that 2 of the most popular video games on earth are free to play, and the only way to give them money is for cosmetic nonsense. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
it's such a different landscape.
Right? If people take that message away, and instead of going like, oh, we'll piecemeal. I saw a meme going around yesterday about the Beatles, and it was like, here's the Beatles, and it was like, here's EA's the Beatles, and the EA in the Beatles was spelled with the EA logo, and like they were selling John for like $4.99 and like Paul for $5.99.
You can get the Ringo songs for 99 cents.
That's what people thought about the way video games were heading. And if you look at mobile gaming, a lot of it's like that too.
Yeah.
But if Fortnite and Apex are to be like determine the way things are going, then that means that a lot of companies' takeaways from this are going to be make a massive, awesome game that's super fun to play, put it out for free, and if people like it, they'll buy clothes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
This
That's
also
so cool.
This also got me. I very much doubt this will be a free-to-play thing that just goes out there, but the new Star Wars game that Respawn's working on, that
Fallen
definitely was kind of like a little bit of like a breath of fresh air.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I like the first 2 Titanfalls. I think they're awesome. I think Titanfall 2 especially is a phenomenal game. But I think the scale with which they were just the grace that they like stuck the landing on Apex, just being like, poof, here it is.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, hi, thank you, great, wonderful. It's like,
Think about that rollout versus Vince Zampella on a park bench at E3 being like, oh, by the way, we're making a new Star Wars game.
if he was like, it's out now and it's free, I'd be like, this is a great game. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's like, you didn't even show me the lightsabers. I hate you.
You and I were talking about this earlier, but I think that Apex Legends has more in common with something like Cloverfield Paradox or Bird Box, although it's actually really good.
Yeah.
Unlike those things.
Hey, I reviewed Cloverfield Paradox.
I'm sorry.
That was a nightmare.
Yeah. In that it just showed up out of nowhere and became part of the conversation. And people were like, well, it's free. I didn't have to pre-order it. I haven't been tracking its release for 7 years, smelling the burnt smoke from the back of the kitchen. We'll keep bringing that salad into the conversation. And it just sort of appears out of nowhere. There was a Jeff Keighley tweet on Monday being like, it's coming. And then as of Friday, the week before, some influencers were like not so tight-lipped about it.
There were a couple leaks that happened and everything. But even despite that, it was this overnight huge success.
Yeah, it's
and
cool.
Incredible
and
to see.
they had a day one launch stream, and they said the game's available right now, and everyone downloaded it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Every day after work now, the game that's being played in the IGN break room is Apex Legends.
Yeah, I mean that's effectively a viral game release. The interesting thing is, I was in like a bar and I looked over and an Anthem commercial was on TV, and I'm so sort of disconnected from like mainstream marketing media stuff, in spite of living in the fucking eye of the hurricane there. I was just like, and I immediately got distracted from the conversation to stare at a TV commercial for a game that I've played like 6 hours of or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's an odd thing to do. But I always wonder about that sort of casting a wider net and really getting people who maybe aren't initially drawn to games to be like, do they care about this?
Yeah.
Does this look like Iron Man versus Avatar? It kind of does. Is that cool for people?
I many of the first 10 million people who played Apex Legends were not the people who are being spoken to via those TV commercials. It's
Right.
playing to a very different audience at
Yeah.
that point. And I'm curious to see where the life of Anthem goes.
I think
these months
the
roll
first
on.
10 million was core gamers. It was people who follow influencers, people who follow outlets and
They had
magazines. and
Ninja
websites.
streaming it.
Yeah,
Like,
all that
yeah.
stuff. And then from there, it was all word of mouth, and that's where it will continue to go. And that, I've never. Have you ever seen a Fortnite commercial? Did they need to?
No.
I mean, I don't think Coca-Cola needs to advertise either, but what do I know?
They put
Also,
real Durr burgers in the real world.
Yeah,
That's their advertising.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone I know has canceled cable, so it's not really like a viable place. That's why it's so fascinating to see a video game commercial at a bar, because you're like, wow,
They still make
they
those.
still make these.
Yeah. I don't understand like people who like sports to begin with. I don't understand what people who like sports in a bar would make of like the Iron Man fighting the dinosaurs and stuff.
Kingdom Hearts 3 commercial in the middle of the Super Bowl would be very weird.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would actually, more than any game, I would pay to see the reactions of the people on a sports bar.
Yeah, those YouTube videos would be amazing.
Some guy being like,
I think it's like
that
when
Donald Duck.
I think it's like when dogs see a mirror and they just don't see anything. They're just like, nah.
Nothing's
Sometimes
going
they
on.
do.
Some
maybe
of them
they
bark at
Maybe
it.
they'd be like, "Why is there Goofy there?" But other ones would just be like,
Well, obviously, with Apex Legends out right now and Anthem on the way, there's also this weird in-between gap that I want to talk about of essentially before we're recording this Friday, the 15th,
Yeah.
is a weird glut of games.
Yep.
We're seeing Metro Exodus, Jump Force, Far Cry New Dawn. On Xbox, we're seeing Crackdown 3 come out, and then people who have EA Origin access can get into Anthem. All these games are coming out on the same day. Obviously, they didn't all know Apex Legends would be launching that
Right.
week too to screw them over.
No, isn't that great? I
Yeah.
think everybody was like, this is a pretty quiet day, and everyone was like, we think so too, and they all just piled onto this one day, and then a week before, this game comes out of nowhere that we've never heard of that is now dominating the conversation.
Yeah.
I've played and completed Far Cry New Dawn. I have lots to say about it. The embargo lifts in 24 hours, so I can't
After
give
the
you
show,
any sort of like anything. Next week I'll talk all about it. But yeah, that's a big one. Crackdown is this week. You know, we just Ryan McCaffrey wrote a preview about that just about a week ago. So that's about as close to release as you can get. So if you like what you read there, then that's what this. It's not one of those things where it's
forward
like
to more.
with 7 days to go, the developers still have plenty of time.
Yeah.
So that's that. Metro has been a weird blind spot for me my entire career. It's just it's something I've. But you were telling me it's open worldy this time, which sounds
it's got
really
like
cool.
outposts and stuff. I haven't gone hands on with that. We've done like a few sort of like wrap up videos that involve doing like research on the previous games, which I've only dabbled in, and then just being like, oh, interesting. And then that seems like I feel like third games in series are often like huge flying leaps forward, and this very much seems like that. And I'm very excited to see what happens.
It's
there.
the one I'm most interested to see because it seems the most different from what's come before. And then you have something huge like Jump Force, which anytime we post about it on IGN does massive traffic.
Yeah, but we really should pump the brakes on anime coverage. I don't know if people are into that kind of thing.
People aren't
I don't know if
huge
this
on it.
Japanimation craze is going to catch on.
One day, I believe in it. But yeah, there are 1,000 business factors why these days happen, but do you think anyone benefits from it? Because I feel like consumers at that point then have to make hard decisions if they want more than one game.
No, it reminds
Right.
me of this Christmas's like holiday lineup.
Yeah.
The movie things where it was Mary Poppins, Spider-Verse, Aquaman, Bumblebee, Mortal Engines, and then Welcome to Marwen all came out within like 10 days of each other.
And then Alita got delayed.
And Alita was like, we're getting the hell out of there. And now I don't know how Alita's
and now it
gonna
comes
do
out
it.
this week with all these games.
Exactly. And now everyone's going to be playing games instead of seeing Alita.
Well, and then Happy Death Day to You also comes out, which like the first one was a pretty big cult classic.
The McRib is back.
The McRib is coming
I
back.
made that up.
It's probably coming back. Netflix is debuting the Umbrella Academy adaptation.
what
that
men
they have.
want, which is to play video games instead of seeing a remake of a Mel Gibson movie.
What women want. It's such a weird phenomenon that we've seen like once in a while. There was an October like 2 years ago where Mario Odyssey, Assassin's Creed, Wolfenstein all came out, and like someone suffers at the end of the day because of it.
Yeah, I think that was Wolfenstein that time.
Yeah,
right?
that one probably suffered a little bit. But.
Yeah, there are so many hours in the day, and I think if you get home from work and you have dinner and you have 3 hours and you can jump into a free game that lets you like squat up with your friends and buy clothes.
Yeah.
You're probably going to play that.
Yeah.
Also, I think there's something for the sort of time sink side of a battle royale game, and I think it's kind of the Snapchat of multiplayer in that none of your progress really comes with you. You know, it's all kind of like, well, you play for 30 minutes and you die, and that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, oh, I got to find out what happens to the story. Does the horse die? Who knows? I got to get to the end, and it's like, I don't know.
The love of the lore and everything comes when you're not playing. We've seen that with not Battle Royale, but a game like Overwatch.
Yes.
Where everyone falls in love with everything outside of when you're playing.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm. It's weird thinking about this lineup. I think if you were like gun to the head, what are you most on board with? I'm like most intrigued by Anthem, but I also have totally learned my lesson with big, huge online games like that, where I want to wait for it to sort of populate, and I want to kind of jump into it in maybe a few weeks or months, and wait until it's like they've ironed out the kinks and people know what they're doing, and I know who's playing on which system.
Far Cry totally snuck up on me as the characters do in those games, and I spent 20 hours with it, so. I can't tell you whether or not I like it, but I generally don't spend 20 hours with something I hate.
But you've also said 20 hours, which is a manageable amount of time to me when playing a game, which is nice to hear.
Well, that's also like the cool thing about Far Cry is it's $39.99.
Yeah.
Which I think that like that's a really interesting part of this conversation, because there's free games, there's movies, and there's $60 games. And in the middle of all that, Far Cry is like, it's $40. It's the same map with more neon stuff, but check it out.
We don't see that $40 price point a lot, but I do like it. You see something like Ratchet and Clank did that a few years back. You see this, and a few other games have done it. It's nice when that happens.
I would really love to see more publishers experiment with different price points other than $60.
Yeah.
I mean, we've come a long way from that weird era where every game got announced in June, every game came out between October and December, and every game cost $60. The $60 thing seems to be the part that's not wiggling around the most. You know, we're seeing the bump up towards like 80 here and there, 100 with extra skins and costumes, but
deluxe gold editions.
No, that's a weird time. I hate it when a bunch of stuff like this comes out, because I feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to be sort of missing out on something.
Yeah.
And I'm already behind because I was traveling while Resident Evil came out. Everyone's doing the tofu races or whatever.
Well, speaking of Resident Evil, we did want to mention briefly, at least on Sony PS4 digital downloads, Kingdom Hearts 3 outsold Resident Evil 2 for January. We don't have full MPD for the month, so it could turn out Resident Evil sold like gangbusters everywhere else, and then Kingdom Hearts is number 5 for the month. Who knows? Probably won't happen, but it could. But Brian, you had brought up there was like an interesting, not rivalry, but sort of like history to these two.
Right.
And their success. And it was kind of like back in the day after, when Resident Evil Remake came out.
Yeah.
It was around the time that the either first Kingdom Hearts or Kingdom Hearts 2 came out. And I think you were saying it was like the producer of Resident Evil said that game doesn't deserve all the praise it's getting. Like something crazy like that.
And so I think a lot. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That a good old classic Attitude Era smack talk.
It's a very different time.
Right. And so I think a lot of people thought that this time around the tides would turn. Resident Evil is a huge property, but nope. Kingdom Hearts won again. So
it's amazing to think that the game with the horror and the men eating the necks of the other men would sell less than the one where the beloved 70-year-old children's characters all jump around colorfully in an everyone experience.
No one could have guessed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. We obviously get MPD results later in the month, but I just wanted to mention it in passing because sales have become so obfuscated and we don't get exact numbers anymore, and it's nice when we have some idea of what's performing well versus what isn't.
I want to see Kingdom Hearts versus Disney Infinity numbers.
That would be interesting.
Because if you were like, hey, person in the past, caveman, which do you think will be more successful in the year 2016 through 19 or whatever? Like the thing that has the toys of the beloved characters that all scan together in a big sandbox?
Still have some on my desk.
Or the very convoluted timeline of the anime boys who team up with the duck and the dog.
Definitely that one.
Yeah.
It's fun seeing everyone's reaction.
I got to give it to you, Kingdom Hearts fans, though. You guys are
Thank you.
You guys are hardcore.
Never.
Like no, I mean the thing is
fine.
like
It's a fine game.
If there was a guy walking into a GameStop and he had both of those games in his hand and he was like, I've never played any of these before. Can you explain the story to me? For Resident Evil, I'd be like, there's a zombie outbreak and you're a cop and you have to survive. And he'd be like, got it. That's the whole story? Yes, that's it.
What about Kingdom Hearts, though?
Wouldn't even know
what about Aqua and Ven and Terra, Brian?
I'd be like, watch my friend Jonathan's 14-minute video.
The more I hear about that, the less I know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is really a bit scary.
Yeah,
you know,
I get that. I've been explaining it to some people and they don't. Yeah,
I told Max I wanted to make a video about like the story so far in Kingdom Hearts and just make stuff up.
That's fair. I would love
to watch that.
Refer to every human character as Sora.
Sora then fought Sora in the Battle of Soras. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, obviously, when we get more MPD results for January, we'll be sure to talk about those too. Bit pressed for time, so I figured we'd move on to trophy test.
All right.
As we do.
I feel like we had a lot to say for a week when there wasn't a lot to say.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
I like to talk about the video games.
The video games are good sometimes, hopefully more of the time than not.
That's
anyway,
your review of video games.
That is my review of video games, much like our tweet, video games.
8 out of 10.
Moving on, this week's trophy test is, as I felt was necessary, Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh, God, I hate you.
I love it so much. If you have not heard us play Trophy Test before, I have made a series of fake trophies that I asked them to guess whether it is a real or a fake trophy paired with real trophies from particular games.
I didn't bring a pen.
franchises. Don't worry about it.
I have gum.
I'll take the gum.
Here's the gum.
I'll take some gum.
It's kind of old.
Breath's not great from the coffee. It's fine. This week is Kingdom Hearts 3. We have 5 trophies to go through. Each of these, I'm going to give you one real one, one fake one. I want you to tell me what the real one is.
Okay.
So play along at home if you're listening and don't or do know about Kingdom Hearts. First, tell me which of these is real. Is it Grand Mage, which is to cast grand magic for the first time, or Majestic Mage, to cast majestic magic for the first time?
Neither of those are very clever. I thought
That was the point.
people don't do like puns anymore.
Theirs are not great title-wise. Yeah. But is it Grand Mage or Majestic Mage?
Majestic.
You're going to say it's real,
Yeah, that's the real one.
Brian? And Max, what do you say? I messed up there with the names. Don't
all
worry
right.
about it.
Doing good.
Never thought of myself as much of a Brian.
That's fair.
I'm going to say the same as Brian's, though.
You can both say
Majestic Mage.
is the real one.
That feels right.
You were both incorrect. Grand Mage is the real one. I'm sorry.
Why?
I don't know.
What?
They made up the words.
Majestic is such a better word.
It is. They messed up. I should write trophies. Anyway, moving on. Really went off the deep end with this one. Which of these is real? Thermosphere, which is to defeat the Schwarzgeist, menace of the ocean between, or
Schwarzgeist?
Schwarzgeist.
Is that like a force ghost?
I think that's
Maybe.
a German liqueur.
or Stratosphere, defeat the Nilfgeist, menace of the sky betwixt.
Milfgeist?
Nilf.
Sorry.
Look, I don't make these up except when I do.
Yes, you do.
I
you
do.
make half of them. You make up literally 50% of them. Oh, and so wait, what was the first one?
Schwarzgeist, menace of the ocean between, or Nilfgeist, menace of the sky betwixt.
I'm going to say A.
You're going to say Schwarzgeist?
I'm going to go with the Milfgeist. I think it's
The
funny.
Milfgeist? Yeah, that's fair. The Schwarzgeist is the real one. Congrats, man.
Is that what I said?
You said the real one.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Is the Nilfgeist real?
No, I hope not.
So that's the thing is Kingdom Hearts has a lot of bizarre verbiage.
Yeah.
But I feel like it doesn't go as far as betwixt.
So betwixt and between is a thing that was in the series in like the older games.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Are you kidding
Betwixt
me?
and between was like a saying.
What do you mean betwixt and between?
I don't know.
That's what they
I'm
say. They
would
honestly
just say it?
forgetting, and so fans are going to be mad
You
at me.
think
I
that
think it was,
game wouldn't say the word betwixt?
I
That
feel
game
like,
should be called
I feel like
betwixt.
in the 17 game titles I've read, I would have seen betwixt in there if they were going to really lean into it. Maybe they've moved away from it in recent games.
To be fair, also half of the characters have X's in their names. So
True.
and betwixt is an anagram of between, so it makes sense.
It's not an anagram.
Don't worry about it. Also, it turns out I was looking it up. Schwarzgeist is a reference to the Einhander developers. They worked on the gummy ship section of Kingdom Hearts 3. Schwarzgeist was a ship in Einhander for PS1.
I think this is what like getting old feels like.
Probably.
Where you just reach a certain point where like words don't mean anything anymore.
Anyway,
Oh, so
moving
they
on.
made the gummy ship? Great.
The gummy
Okay.
ship, yeah. Moving on from the Nilfgeist. Which of these is real? Kitchen Nightmare, fail cuisine minigames 15 times in a row, or Master Chef, earn an excellent while preparing every type of cuisine.
Is that Ratatouille?
Yeah, that's with Remy.
You know, Ratatouille is my favorite Pixar movie, and it's insane that there's a Ratatouille video game out on PlayStation 4 in 2019
That you will probably not play.
that I could not find time for betwixt anything else in the world. I think the first one is real because Master Chef is a thing already, then they'd probably get sued.
Brian, what
so
about
is
you?
the kitchen. You call me Brian again.
Oh yeah, Kitchen Nightmare.
Kitchen Nightmare is also. I'm going to go with A.
You're gonna both say Kitchen Nightmare is real, or
I'm gonna pivot to Master Chef.
You're saying Master
the last
Chef?
second.
Master Chef is the real one.
Yes,
Good pivot.
that felt right.
But
true.
I went with both of those Fox cooking shows. Moving
we're
on.
even, right?
Yeah, it is a 1-1 tie currently. 2 trophies left.
Killing it.
Which of these is real? Full Swing, which is to fully power up every Keyblade, or Blade Master, which is to obtain a Keyblade that is fully powered up.
You could do that. Just find one on the street.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Supposed to return that to the lost and found if some lose their keys. I'm going to go with B.
Blade Master.
A is
And
the
you're
real
gonna say A?
one.
Blade Master B is the real one. Congratulations, Max. Moving in, we'll find out. if
I
this
am the
becomes a
Blade
tie.
Master. For that one question. Sorry, go ahead.
You're fine, Brian. I love that you're just like staring at the Kingdom Hearts art, like trying to figure
Well, I
out.
was thinking about why Donald Duck doesn't wear pants, but Goofy does.
This feels kind of like being at the doctor's office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are questions that make me uncomfortable, but I feel obligated to answer them.
Have you had experience with the Nilfgeist?
Yeah,
Not in the last 6 months.
it's a
That's fair
disease I've
enough.
been trying to get rid of.
That's fair. Understandable. Final question, 2-1, Max in the lead. Lasting memories, which is to hold on to 50 photos, or the friends we made, which is to take a photo of each world-specific party member. So either lasting memories, hold on to 50 photos, or the friends we made, which is to take a photo of each world-specific
I'll
party
go with B.
member.
Yeah, B.
You're both saying B is real?
I'm going to lose, though. I have to go A.
How old is Sora?
In this
ask
one,
that.
I think he's like 16.
Okay.
Ish.
I was going to say, I don't know how old that little boy is, but if he's like 9 and has an Instagram in that game, that's messed up.
Yeah, he's 16.
I'm going to go with
He has a
A.
weird Instagram on his gummy phone.
He's
You're
too
saying
young,
A?
Too young to be a NILF master.
God damn it. The correct answer is A. So, Brian, on your last minute switch, you've tied it.
We tied.
You tied,
Hey,
so you both
all
get
right.
3
Do you have
points for the
a
week.
lightning round tiebreaker?
I don't have one.
You can't pull some Kingdom Hearts trivia out of your ass?
All right.
Yeah, I think you can.
Say, make up a character name and say true or false this character is in the game.
Ooh.
You can even just name a dude from a Disney movie.
Yeah. Zigbar. Is he in the game?
Is Zigbar in the game?
Is Zigbar a character in the game? Winner will be. Who can tell?
True.
You're going to say true? What are you
I
going
don't
to say?
think Zigbar is a real dude. That's fake.
Zigbar is real.
Yes!
He is the nobody.
No!
He's the nobody of. Wait. He's the nobody of Braig. Another
I'm
character.
going to go eat lunch, dude.
Brig?
Anyway, that has been Trophy Tuck Kingdom Hearts 3. Thank you all so much for watching the 578th episode of IGN Beyond, our weekly PlayStation show. When we're not on the show, Brian, where can people find you?
Brig.
In the break room.
And Max, where can people find you?
Nilf hunting.
Fair enough. And I am just look for us on Twitter and Instagram. You'll find us. This has been Beyond. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, Nilfgeist. Oh, God.
That was a great show.
Thank you, guys.
That was really good.